Forbes Books presents Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow. Transformation for a new and better world. Here's David.
I'm back with Melanie Velde, the founder of Big Tree Global. We're digging deeper into her book, Lead Like a Genius, that explores real-life practical roadmap and guide to maximize your sustainability initiatives. Melanie, in part one, you mentioned the marine plastic crisis, which has impacted over 200 species worldwide. Can you talk about Sweden's novel approach in order to eliminate waste in their supply chain?
Yeah, for sure. So as it currently stands, by 2050, it's estimated that there will be more plastic in our oceans than fish, if measured by weight. Most people are aware of the global warming issue, air pollution. Over 90% of people in cities breathe unsafe air. So how do we tackle these issues? And I think the Swedish example is a great one. So it shows what you can do if you start working with partners across your sector. And so what they have done is they have completely eliminated waste, plastic wrapping, boxes across the grocery and retail sector. So what they're using instead of boxes, putting all the products in, taking it more to distribution centers than to supermarkets where they also have to be unpacked and put onto shelves, the whole industry just now uses crates. So they're durable crates that can also be recycled at its end of life. And so that means that products don't need to be wrapped up in all sorts of wrapping and boxes anymore, but it goes straight from producer into the supermarket, and where it can just be lifted straight on the crate into the shelves that are also supporting the size and shape of the crates. So a really innovative system that solves a lot.
Okay, no, that's a really interesting example. As we go from the micro to the macro, and then we take a look at global greenhouse emissions, 73.2% in energy, 5.2% in industry, 3.2% in waste, 18.4% in forestry, land and ag in your book. Some basic crystal ball, if you could, on cutting emissions worldwide to net zero. How are we going to get there?
Yeah, so I think what I always try and encourage people is to think about what are your hotspot areas. Yes, at some stage it's good to measure across your business what your emissions are and try and cut across. But think about the hotspot areas. What is that 20% where you can get 80% of the outcomes, and concentrate on that first? And I'd love to give you an example of light as a service. So if you think about many buildings, right, like airports, so Schiphol Airport uses a lot of light. And you may be familiar with the Phoebus cartel, where light manufacturers came together and they intentionally decided, let's shorten the duration of our products so that we can sell them more frequently and up our revenue. And so Schiphol Airport deals with a lot of wastage with light products, for example, and went to their supplier Philips and said, we don't want to buy light of you anymore, as in fixtures and fittings, but we'd like to buy light as a service. So we would like a contract for 3 years. You're now responsible to replace any fixtures and fittings and also to pay the energy bill. And that completely changed the incentive for Philips designers to design fixtures and fittings that are more durable to start with, but are also easier to replace in parts as opposed to the full product, and that are more energy efficient. And simply by turning that model on its head, they managed to reduce wastage, fixtures and fittings by 75%. And not just wastage, but that also means all the emissions related to producing these products unnecessarily. And they reduce energy usage by 50%. So these are huge gains. And so you see other companies doing similar things, like Kier in Singapore. They do it with cooling as a service. And so in most companies, there are things that you can, with some innovative solutions, make real gains. And so I would say always, and what the book also very much follows is those, the circular design principles of start as upstream as possible, start as close as possible to closing off the tap. What can you do to prevent emissions, prevent wastage? as much as possible. And as soon as you can go down, into the kind of more downstream solutions. And there are some brilliant, innovative examples around that also in terms of things that you can do. But see, it's so insightful if you look at these examples from around the world. So many solutions already exist. And if companies can take inspiration from that and apply it in their own context, we can absolutely get there 100%.
Thank you for those examples. And as you try to crystallize what you're saying, basically, you're focusing on reducing, designing, using better options, refurbish, and then recycle. Would you mind caring to comment in that method as you go about it?
Yeah, so I think the first questions are really around where can you reduce? That is the most effective thing, and is also going to be increasingly important from a resource scarcity perspective. So prices of materials are going to go up, of resources are going to go up. So that's also important from a commercial perspective. But that is the most effective way for us to really get there with climate change, with pollution. And so then as you go down the questions that you'll see in that part of the impact wheel, is there are indeed other types of solutions. So we saw the light as a service example, great way to reduce. There are really simple, easy, quick wins to reduce. Obviously, the typical things around buildings, they're a huge part of our emission problem. Better insulation, that kind of thing, using less light when you don't need to. So there are also easy kind of quick gains. And then indeed, as you go down, I don't know how much detail you'd like me to go into. There are ways of considering alternative options. If you talk about energy use, using renewable energy as opposed to fossil fuels as much as possible, as fast as we are able to. Obviously, it can't all be overnight. And as you get to the kind of downstream solutions, such as recycling, they are not as effective. First of all, only 9% of plastic, for example, actually gets recycled, even though people make an effort to separate waste. But also it actually, creates more emissions, the whole kind of recycling process itself. So there are different ways, and it's the same with offsetting. There are ways to offset that are not very effective. So you see companies, for example, that invest in RECs that, they're meant to say that actually by you investing in those RECs, renewable energy certificates, renewable energy is added to the grid. But that would actually mean that you are helping to reduce emissions if it's actually additional, and it's not often the case. So often, you could be investing and spending money investing in RECs, but it's actually not really making a difference. So it's also important there to actually reflect on if I am offsetting and I'm going for these downstream solutions, which is for most companies going to be, it has to be part of your toolbox. There are more effective ways to do that. And I'm starting a project just now actually also on, working really with kind of tribal farming communities on regenerating their land and planting certain grains, using biochar in the ground that really kind of captures emissions from the air in a way that also provides economic opportunities. So I would say I would always go for the most upstream solutions, but when you get lower down in the kind of circular options that you have, to really reflect on, are these actually really tackling the issue?
While you're attacking the issue, you're big on saying that innovators and early adapters are going to get the most of the bang for the buck and tying it in terms of planning. And you gave some really interesting and thought-provoking ideas to tie in on a plan on impact, success, short and long that you measured. How can you measure it? What commercial success looks like? Key milestones, key roles and responsibilities, main resources, stakeholder interests, main barriers. What does progress management look like? I mean, you're very, very close to the line on this to business KPIs and just tying them interwoven both. Do you care to comment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. It is, as we kind of started the conversation, it's important that what you do is integrated as part of your business model, you're going to get much better results, much better outcomes. So that's the same also for your measurement. It's not a kind of separate thing. It is part of your overall business performance, and it should be an integrated part of your KPIs, and also of your kind of target setting for staff. If you're going to really integrate this into your business, how you make this part of kind of your bonus systems, your measurement systems, that should all be integrated at the same time.
You were kind enough to point out, like, business case with an interface CEO, where he said costs are down, products are better, customers are happier, and not an expense to the earth, and employees are happier. It's just a win-win going around. And then you dive in further and say, check your metrics, business growth, goodwill, PR, productivity, redacted and reduce risk preventing assets, cost savings, innovation, brand value. If you would just emphasize the point, if you could, that the sustainability is overall better, you're saying, for the business and the business KPIs?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's so many studies now that show the positive business case for sustainability. I am not the first to say that should be the reason. I think if that's what gets you started, I think that's great. I think it's more powerful when it's driven by doing the right thing. But the business case can absolutely be really powerful by engaging with sustainability if you do it well. And you touched on a few important things there. So one key thing that you see, like a Deloitte piece of research shows, is that purpose-driven companies that do this well grow 3 times faster. And I think that's only going to accelerate, because if we see the studies, it's across the board that most people are more keen to buy from companies that are more sustainable, if that commercial value is there at the same time. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But it's mostly the younger generations that care. So if you think about customers, customer loyalty, customer referrals, boosting growth, that's an important piece. The other part of the puzzle is really the ability to have talented staff. Most business leaders are aware how important that is for their business to get the best possible people to come and work for you. And again, you see that 80% of millennials indicate they'd even work for less salary for companies that are more aligned with their values. And so as the younger generations are becoming a bigger part of your stakeholders, your customers, your staff, but also investors, I would expect this to only become more important.
You mentioned that really the focus is to make sustainability like the cherry on top of the ice cream, so to speak. And you also said sometimes with people with great intentions, totally bomb and fail. Would you mind commenting on that paradox?
Yeah, so the cherry on the top is let's say on top of the cake, is very much to say that, right, people are going to buy your product, buy your service because of the service, because of the product, right? That's why they come. If you have great impact, but your product is rubbish or not really valuable, people probably won't come back unless it's just a cheap thing, and then it's more like a kind of donation type thing. So that's really the point I was trying to make with that. Sorry, what was the other point you made there?
Yeah, the other point is that some people with just absolutely great intentions totally fail and bomb.
Yeah, it's again that pitfall of people, with great intentions. And it's something that I did myself, even coming from a business background, is that when people start getting this, what I call the impact glasses on, they sometimes completely forget about the commercial side. And that just simply, is not going to get you very far. So I would say that's one of the most important things. And again, if we talk about the kind of charitable approach, so kind of jumping to the symptoms, without really tackling that underlying issue, it sometimes can do more harm than good. And if you look at, when secondhand clothing donations ramped up in Africa, more than 60% of people in the local textile industries lost their job as a consequence. So, you can have the best intentions, but it can also then disrupt local economies. And studies also show that when people are dependent on charitable donations, it can have real adverse psychological impacts. It can lead to depression, isolation, voicelessness, despair. And so it's a downward spiral as opposed to empowering people. So really what you said earlier, giving people a hand up as opposed to a handout. So I would say it's like, sometimes people really want to do something. And, people sometimes say, look, just get started, as long as you do something. But I would say over my whole journey, 20 years now, it does really matter what you do and how you do it. And I think sometimes it's good to learn from trial and error, be entrepreneurial and just try stuff out. But I think there's also a real benefit in learning from others and look at best practices from around the world. Why do they have exceptional success rates in really making a difference? And at the same time, they're doing really well as in terms of their commercial success also, and learn from those examples. What is it that they do differently? Why do they have a 300 to 400% better success rate? And that was really for me the inspiration, the drive behind my research and behind writing my book.
Thank you for that. Okay, what have we missed or we didn't add to Big Tree Global, or anything about the book that you'd like to put forth?
Thanks. Yeah, I think we've covered so many things. Thank you so much. That the book is very short and concise. It's like someone gave me that feedback. I've tried. It was maybe one of the hardest things to do is leave a lot out. It is really short, easy to read. Whilst some of the actually underlying concepts are complex, it's a quick, easy read, and I hope really inspirational for people as to what they can do and take away from it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Melanie, for coming on. We're a lot educated on behalf of our listeners. We're excited you were kind enough to take this time, and I know some of us are overloaded, but I'm just overjoyed to learn all this stuff. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Dave, so much for letting me have the opportunity to speak to you about it. Really appreciate it.
To connect with David, go to davidradlow.com. David's book set, The Principles of Cartel Disruption and Secret Stories of Leadership, Growth, and Innovation, are available wherever books are sold. This has been Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow, a presentation of Forbes Books.